The Philippines is standing at a strategic crossroads. Having successfully operated its fleet of FA-50PH fighters supplied by South Korea, Manila now faces a larger question. Can it take the leap toward acquiring the next-generation KF-21 Boramae? The decision is no longer about technology or alliance politics alone. It is about money, how much the country can realistically afford, where those funds might come from, and whether such a purchase can be sustained without undermining national finances. In 2025, the Philippine national budget reached approximately 6.33 trillion pesos, or around 109 billion United States dollars, marking a 10% increase from the previous year. The Marcos administration framed this budget as a balance between economic recovery, industrial reform, and national security. Defense spending accounts for roughly 250 billion pesos, about 4% of the total budget, under the Horizon 3 modernization plan that will run until 2030. On paper, this looks promising, but the details reveal a tighter fiscal picture. Around 60% of the defense budget goes to salaries and operations, another quarter covers maintenance and logistics, and only the remaining 15% is available for modernization projects. That means fewer than 40 billion pesos, or about 700 million United States dollars, are immediately available for new acquisitions each year. At the same time, the government is managing a public debt load exceeding 63% of gross domestic product, while inflation and social spending continue to pressure the Treasury. Economic growth remains steady, between 5 and 6% annually, but Manila cannot simply divert resources to big-ticket defense programs without risking domestic backlash. Any plan to buy KF-21 fighters must therefore rely on creative financing mechanisms and long-term cost-sharing arrangements rather than direct annual payments from the state budget. The KF-21 Boramae is an advanced multi-role fighter designed by Korea Aerospace Industries to bridge the gap between the F-16 and the F-35. The aircraft's estimated unit price is between 65 and 70 million United States dollars. A minimal operational squadron of 12 aircraft, including ground support equipment, training, and spare parts, would require a total investment of roughly 1.1 to 1.3 billion United States dollars. For comparison, the earlier FA-50PH contract for 12 aircraft in 2014 cost about 450 million United States dollars. The Boramae package would be nearly 3 times more expensive and would also demand greater spending on maintenance, simulator infrastructure, and pilot training. It is therefore clear that the Philippine Air Force could not pay for such a purchase outright from a single fiscal cycle. A dedicated financial plan would be essential. There are 3 realistic funding paths that Manila could pursue. The first is internal financing under Horizon 3. The total defense modernization allocation through 2030 is estimated at 35 billion United States dollars. If the Air Force receives even 3 to 4% of that sum for high-end aircraft programs, it could allocate around 1 to 1.2 billion United States dollars, just enough for an initial order of 6 to 12 KF-21s. That would require political will and careful sequencing, as other branches of the military are competing for the same funds to finance submarine purchases, missile systems, and naval modernization. The second option lies in defense credit lines provided by South Korea. Seoul has a record of supporting arms exports with low-interest government loans, notably through the Export-Import Bank of Korea. Previous deals involving FA-50 fighters and K-9 howitzers for other nations included repayment terms of 10 to 15 years at interest rates below 2%. A similar package could make the KF-21 affordable to Manila without immediate budget strain. In return, the Philippines could offer industrial cooperation, such as hosting a maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility at Clark or Subic, allowing Korea Aerospace Industries to service regional clients. This would create local jobs and partially offset the cost through industrial participation. The third option is to use a defense industrial offset arrangement. Under the Tatak Pinoy Strategy, a 10-year plan launched in 2025 to strengthen domestic manufacturing, the government encourages foreign defense partners to reinvest at least 30% of contract value back into Philippine industry. In a KF-21 deal, that could translate into local production of components, training programs for engineers, or investments in avionics maintenance. This mechanism would not reduce the headline price of the aircraft, but would recover a significant portion through economic value added inside the country. Political and diplomatic factors would also shape the deal. South Korea considers the Philippines a key partner in the Indo-Pacific security architecture and could be willing to extend preferential financing as part of its export strategy. The United States, although not directly involved, might indirectly support the effort through grants for radar, communications, or pilot training under existing defense cooperation agreements. However, domestic politics remain a wild card. Public protests in 2025 over corruption and rising food prices have made the government cautious about new foreign loans. To secure legislative approval, President Marcos Jr. would need to frame the KF-21 not as a luxury purchase, but as a long-term industrial and strategic investment that strengthens sovereignty. Analysts can outline three possible financial scenarios for the KF-21 project. In the optimistic full commitment case, Manila signs a complete 12-aircraft contract worth around $1.2 billion United States dollars, backed by a Korean credit facility with payments spread over 15 years. Deliveries would begin around 2030, and the Philippines would become the first export customer of the Boramae. In the more likely phased entry scenario, the Air Force procures 6 aircraft initially, financed through a mix of national funds and Korean loans, with options for additional units later. This approach limits financial risk while building operational experience. Finally, in the conservative deferred acquisition scenario, the country continues with upgraded FA-50 Block 20s and postpones KF-21 procurement until the export variant matures and the economy expands further. Each scenario carries trade-offs. The benefits of acquiring the KF-21 are clear: a stronger deterrent posture, closer industrial ties with South Korea, and domestic technological spillovers. But the risks are equally tangible. High maintenance costs estimated at 20 to 25 million United States dollars per year for each squadron, potential over-reliance on foreign loans, and vulnerability to political turnover that could delay payments or disrupt training programs. The sustainability of any deal depends less on headline affordability and more on long-term fiscal discipline and institutional continuity. From a broader perspective, the KF-21 debate illustrates how defense modernization has become inseparable from economic policy. The Philippines is no longer just a buyer of weapons. It is trying to position itself within an industrial network that spans Japan, South Korea, and India. If executed wisely, such deals could create a security dividend, where every peso spent on defense generates domestic growth, employment, and skills. But if managed poorly, they could deepen the debt burden and crowd out investment in essential social infrastructure. Ultimately, the question, can the Philippines afford the KF-21, is less about whether the country has the cash today and more about whether it can design a sustainable strategy for the next decade. A combination of budget discipline, credit diplomacy, and industrial participation could make the Boramae dream attainable by 2030. The purchase would not only modernize the Air Force, but also symbolize a shift in national mindset, from importing security to building it. For a country seeking to protect its skies and assert its sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea, that transformation might be worth every peso, provided it is paid for with foresight rather than impulse.